Hello, everyone. Happy second day of September, first trading day of September. Hope everyone who had a Labor Day holiday had a good one yesterday, had a good long weekend. For those who didn't, I hope you had a wonderful weekend and a nice no USA trading day yesterday. Well, the futures were open, again, for limited hours, but stocks were closed. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Sterling. Thank you for putting in the news and everything. We're still waiting for people to filter in late this morning. Good morning to Rusty over on Rumble. What else we got? Yes, Chicago is a murder capital of the world. Luckily, I escaped. That is shocking news. MicroStrategy, or I'm sorry, Strategy buys more Bitcoin. That's their only strategy? Buy Bitcoin. Uh, Yeah, we'll talk about that. The UK yield rises. Yields are rising a lot of places. Yields are really rising. Rick says good night. Rick's already done with the live stream. It's good night from Rick. Good night, Rick. Thank you for tuning in. What else we got? We got the McDonald's value meals. A couple of them returned. September red in full effect. Yeah. Well, we'll see. The months have sort of started off weak. I'm still expecting it's why hedges. Talked about getting hedges in place, and I'll talk about my little strategy with that. Good morning. Hello, Charles. Your kind of day, a red day? A red day? So, what else we have? Thanks for putting in the French and German bond yields. Good morning, Ted. So, stronger than expected August inflation added to concerns rising chance of ECB rate keeps rates steady. Yeah, well, they might have cut a little too much. I mean, it's going to get interesting here, too. Amazon shares dip on slower Prime signups. All right. Well, people are running out of money. So, what do we got going on this week? Since we've already one day into it, today we have the ISM manufacturing numbers coming out at 10 a.m. Eastern. The S&P Global Manufacturing PMI numbers at 9:45 Eastern. Keep an eye on ISM manufacturing prices. They're still expected to climb up. That's going to be key at 10 a.m. What else? This week we have tomorrow, normally on Tuesday, we got the JOLTS numbers, but due to the holidays on Monday, the JOLTS numbers are coming out on Wednesday. And yay, we got Fed Speak. We also got Red Book on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. Thursday, we have the initial and continuing jobless claims, the ISM services numbers. The EIA crude numbers are again delayed a day because of Monday holiday and more Fed speak. And then Friday, we got non-farm payrolls Friday. So we got a busy week in terms of that. Something every day. Pretty red this morning, except for Pepsi. Pepsi, again, activist, sort of trying to do a little mini takeover there. You got some VIX call. Good job, Rick. You are welcome, Rick. Again, and we'll get bounces from this. That's why personally I like to unwind a little as the VIX spikes and then look to put it back on. Not the whole thing. Not the whole thing. We're just starting September. And we're sort of in the S&P. Looks like we're forming a more of a rounded top pattern. We'll see how much we pull back. Good morning, Tony. Pretty red today. Let's just refresh this also. Everything's down. Consumer defensive down the least. But everything's down. Also, yeah, the tone is shifting with AI and chips and everything. Keep an eye on that too. We'll still get some rip your face off rallies and those things because people still, it's cheap, just buy it all. But it's not. It's definitely running out of momentum. Let's put it that way. We still have a first cut priced in for September. In how many days? In 15 days. We're still in greed mode. Sure, we were at 39 last week. We're at 38.94. So remember, this market is not cheap by any means. Earnings. I didn't even look at NIO this morning. After the close, we got Zscaler. Tomorrow we got Dollar Tree. Macy's, Campbell's. Wednesday after close, we got Salesforce, which could be a decent one to keep an eye on. Thursday, Broadcom. Broadcom, very important on Thursday. Lululemon, DocuSign, but Broadcom's the most important. That's probably the biggest one this week. Next biggest would be Lululemon from a high-end consumer or higher-end consumer to see if they're still struggling or if they're turning stuff around. And Salesforce would be my next two. So, buy the dip. Thanks for the cheapies. It's not a loss until you sell. Yeah, well, what if you're forced to sell? Remember, people are leveraged to the hilt on this market, especially retail. So I'm talking about rounded. Is there a rounded drawing? Is there a round tool? Is there a round? I need a round one. I don't know. I'll have to look for that later. Let's see. But this is where, I guess I could use an ellipse or an arc or a curve. Maybe I could do a curve. I want it to curve the other way. How do I get it to curve the other way? Oh, what a lame curve. But let's see. This is, what if we extend? Oh, well, that's a little too curved. I'll have to play with that later, but this is starting to get to a rounded top. This is starting to get to a rounded top, so keep that. Again, I talked before how we're waning momentum. Remember, we now have a triple daily divergence actually confirmed. It was confirmed on Friday. Now we're breaking below the channel line. I want to see how we close the day, though. Next target down, if we continue to sell off, is the 87.5 from this last little run up, right around 63.82. Key resistance. This, I mean, we've dropped through a bunch of stuff right now. So key resistance right now, for me, is coming in about 64.40 on any significant rally up. In minor resistance, your minor level I'd be keeping an eye on is right around 64.25. So those on a bounce, 64.25 is a key. You can look at a window of about 64.18 to 64.25 for another rollover play there. Down below, we still have the magnet price of 63.82.75, which you see right in front of that. Sorry for the dog snoring in the background. He's back in my office. Wife is back in Chicago. Had to leave. We couldn't even get Labor Day together. Got called back to work early. So, what else? So this is the key area I'm watching into the on rollover plays in the open. 63.83, 63.82 area. Below that, a lot of buying pressure in here down to 63.62 area. But this is very key. And then the bounce will be interesting. On a bigger picture, I'm looking at, if we even bounce and roll over this week, the key area, here's the 50% harmonic, also the 63.81 area to 63.45. And that's from the lows back at the beginning of August to the highs on the 28th of August. So if we roll over again this week, this is a very key buy zone. But if we close below 63.45, it tips the probabilities. The only gotcha with that is we got the 50 in the way, which it hasn't reconnected with since it broke above it and retested it back in May. So there's still some magnet things and lower. And remember, look, you can sort of see the rounded top here. Did better on the weekly, but this is just into the weekly rotation zone. So I will still be watching for bounce plays, and those would be bounce plays only, not necessarily for new highs. Okay? Thanks for putting that in. NIO was a beat miss. Good night was for the dog. You can hear the snoring. He's already worn out. He's been up since 3:45. It's been a long morning already. All right, now this is very interesting. The NASDAQ just reconnected with the 50 EMA. Same thing here. It broke above it at the end of April, beginning of May, retested, and we've been off to the races since then. We've now reconnected with the 50 and temporarily broken below the channel. And we're actually below the 62.5. So it's going to be interesting to see if this can't get a pretty strong rally on. It's going to look like it's going to close below the 62.5. On any bounces, I'm looking to about 23,200 to 23,220, and then 23,260 on a closing basis. But there was buying pressure down here before, back from the 20th and the 21st, 22nd, and we're now reconnected with the 50 and also back even on the 6th. So there's a pretty key support area, but if this area breaks, including the 50, the next key target is 22,937 roughly. And then the lows from the beginning of August. Also, this is a sloppier channeling head and shoulders. We've now confirmed a neckline break. So we've confirmed a neckline break. Let's just get the targets on here. So it's not officially triggered unless it closes below here. But if that were to play out, and it is against the weekly rotation zone, we could still see some more downwards price action. And remember, AI seems to be fading. Is that a double? This is Charles. At the head and shoulders. Don't trade this as a head and shoulders. It's, you know what? We got breakdown patterns either way. I'm looking at it. The only niggly in here is it's against the weekly rotation zone. So I got to be a little more aggressive on downside targets, and it hasn't officially triggered yet. It's confirmed today, but not triggered. And the NASDAQ was already acting weaker last week. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. So, Dow, we now have a little mini confirmed double top against the daily and weekly rotation zones. But let's see where the Dow closes today in relationship to the low of 45,183. Because could the Dow then pull back closer to the 50 EMA? And the Dow also on the weekly basis, look, we have waning momentum on this last push higher. Big divergence here. So, that's another one. Keep an eye on. On any rally in the Dow, it's about 45,350 is key resistance. The Russell, we got some waning momentum, but the Russell, it checked off the 87.5 last week. I'll still be looking. If it can hold the rotation zone, I'll be still looking for a possible bounce play in the Russell. Not necessarily today. But going in, right now we're trading against very key support. It was already tested once last week. We're testing it today. If that breaks, the next level is just right around where the rotation zone is, 2310. The VIX, which even, Thursday was cheap. Friday, even still, in the scheme of things, still cheap. Now it's not as cheap. Don't rush to put on hedges right now. Wait for the bounce play again. If you don't already have them on, and you should if you listen to this channel, at least have something on. At least have something. It doesn't have to be in the VIX either. It could be, remember, options were cheap, puts were cheap in the SPX, the NDX, the spiders, the Qs. They were cheap for a while. Now, what I like to do personally is I'm going to be looking to take a little off. I'm going to be watching where we close today. 18, 19 is key. If we close above 19, we could get a little more downward pressure, a little more upward pressure in the VIX. But again, I'm not shooting for this kind of move yet. I like to take something off, to lock something in, and then put a partial takeoff, only a partial. Because we're getting to the beginning of the month, we could get some leftovers from the end of last month. We got the yield pressure climbing, and then look to get something on back on the dip, reestablish the full position, because that helps pay for the hedge. If I can pay fully for the hedge by a little unwind and then re-put something back on, that's what I like to do. I want to see where we close today with it, though. The DAX breaking down below a very key trend line here. All right, I'm looking for the DAX, even on bounces now. The DAX is looking like it's also forming a rounding top pattern, bottom of the rotation zone, very key support level. But if this breaks on the DAX, this little area in here, I'm looking for it to reconnect with the 200 area and closer to 22,600. So, notes. Pulling back, it's easier to see in the yields because the yields held key support. The 10-year yields, we got cycles at the bottom coming out of oversold last week. More importantly, look at the 30-year. They're pulling back a little right now, but they were retesting close to this 5% level. So that's going to be another key one to watch for. And Sterling put in the you have yields climbing in France, in UK also. Spain has not, and Italy have not started climbing yet, and they are not in good financial shape either. So keep an eye on them. If you're looking on yields, keep an eye. If Spain and Italy start climbing too, it's going to get real interesting over there. By the way, yen, the Japanese, which would start off early, they're pulling back a little right now. Here, if you look at also the 30-year, this is one of the canaries in the coal mine I'm still keeping an eye on. Because look at even the 30-year in Japan. Broke out to new highs last week. Pulling back a little today, but the trend is definitely up. The yield appetite is starting to shift, meaning demanding higher yield on longer durations. Thank you for putting that in Sterling. All right, so keep an eye on yields. I'm not saying you need to trade yields. I'm saying keep an eye on them on your platform. What else do we have? We have crude, which interesting to me, was trying to break out higher. I'm watching today where crude trade closes. It was trying to break out higher, it's pulling back a little now. It is at cycle tops. But the more interesting thing, gold rallying up, hitting a new high, 35.78, just shy of the next harmonic. Again, would not, as I said, do not be short in gold. Who was trying to short gold? Was it Dark Screen? Who was trying to short gold? Do not short gold. Right now. Again, let's break out silver, which we haven't looked at in a while, but silver finally last Friday broke through the major resistance area. Silver pulling back into the weekly rotation zone. We got the double cross pattern on the daily, and now breaking out to new highs also. Getting very overbought, so if you're playing a short-term breakout, would move up a stop. Playing long-term position, nothing to do there. Dollar index, another one. Yesterday trying to break down below key support and now rocketing back up. The dollar, for all those dollar bears out there, can't break down. It's just not able to break down. Now, it's still caught in this big range. By the way, when you do this kind of move on a holiday on the U.S., because I was watching this 97.20 area, the close was 97.23. Okay, right at that level. This was not a shorting opportunity for me due to holiday. I wanted to see how it reacted today, and it's back in the range. Now, it's not long yet. This was technically was a percent beat buy above yesterday's high, being the holiday high. I'm watching to see it's got to get above 98.20 and sustain above there for me. It's still caught in this big range, but the dollar index is refusing with all the pressure to break down. Spiders coming up to the harmonic on Thursday, selling off on Friday, definitely lower today. There is still, we're trading 637.75. Right here, 637.76 was the key gap up open. It's a key gap up open from Friday the 22nd. So we're trading right at that now. If we lose this area, we have a gap down open from the Thursday the 21st. So the next target for me would be 636.28, and then it would be to the full gap fill to the close, 635.55. So those are all the targets I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the spiders. Remember, longer term, we are into the weekly rotation zone if we continue lower. All right. I think this is off the table, though. This potential double. Hold on. Let me see here. Wrong one. I didn't want that one. Boy, what am I doing here? Hold on. Oh, I need a day off. Okay. Did it hit it? We got to be official. It looks like it hit it. I'll have to verify later, but it looks like it hit it. So that double's probably not in play just yet. But if we break down below these key lows, I'm watching for a reconnect with the 50. The Qs, again, you have a head and shoulders pattern, not a double because of this and this. It's just it's traded as a head and shoulders. So it looks like it's confirming right now. And again, if we want the targets on this one, right around there. So there's your pattern on the Qs, just as the NASDAQ futures. So we could see again against the weekly rotation zone. So if this does break down, key targets 549.65, then 542.85 would put us close to the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. So we have patterns there too. You meant I would not trade gold? No, I would not short gold. Bitcoin, remember we're still in. We've triggered the double top pattern. Double top pattern. We're holding right at the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. We triggered it officially on the weekly. Also, we triggered it on the daily and followed through on the weekly. So I'm still looking for rollover plays in the good old Bitcoin. Ethereum also, we don't touch on the base on this a lot, but Ethereum has a potential double top. Again, things could be shifting in the crypto world too. Ethereum, which has been on a major run, has a potential double top, not triggered yet. Broadcom, which has earnings this week, has a potential double top, which would take it below the 50 EMA also, and could take it back closer to the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. Thank you, Sterling. Sterling measured it out for us. Thanks, shout out to Sterling, as always, doing a wonderful job. So thank you. I can take that off. Wasn't validated. There we go. But the cash S&P, the good old SPX, is not invalidated. And this will be easy to see. I trust you, Sterling. See, you can see right here, just for people newer, it would add trade above. If it dead stops on the level, it's still valid. If it trades through the level, it's invalid. So you still have the cash S&P has a potential double. So that's where we sit. NVIDIA also, no, we don't have a double. This was a triple, but NVIDIA really rounding over also. Really running out of momentum, and weekly cycles could go down for a fair amount. It's got to really cut through these lows and the 50 EMA. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on chips this week. Tesla, not much to talk about here. Not much to talk about here. What else? Do we have anything else? Oh. We also had CRM, Salesforce, having earnings this week, but not a fantastic pattern there. Yes, this is technically a weekly double. It looks like it works. Let's see. But a long way off from there. Yeah, because this is a whole move to start it. Yep, that works. Until then, it's against the weekly rotation zone, though. It'd have to show me something again. It would not just. I would not be long this going into earnings against the prior breakdown level also. There we go. Don't trust me. The spiders. Oh, I anchored it to wrong peak. The spider is still valid by C. All right, so spiders. Thank you for correcting it. I can't. Well, see, I can trust you because you corrected it. So the spiders is still technically valid. I can put that back on later. All right. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on this week. Let's look at Lulu, because that's another important one that's in the good old dumpster. Lululemon hitting the next key harmonic lower, but look at this. Breaking all major support. I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to do that. Don't show me that right now. P to E ratio is now getting interesting. 14. This is actually sort of interesting. This will be interesting. I'm going to do a little more investigation of this going into earnings, although it did close below the 62.5. So let's see if this pulls down and makes a little mini double bottom pattern. That could be interesting heading into earnings. But that's really about it. All right, that's where we sit. Let's peek back at the S&P just opened. This should have been a pretty negative. All right, we're pretty much at that key level I already talked about. So that's pretty much there. We do have a mini potential double bottom if it doesn't go much further than this. Maybe not. Why do I click on the wrong things this morning? Nah, 63.83.50. 63.83.25, so it went through it by a tick. There's no mini potential double there. But we are against very, 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 very key support. If this breaks again, next key area is around this 33.62, 33 to 33.69 area. And the VIX, let's see how bad that opened today. This has got to be a pretty... What did I type? What am I thinking? I meant the tick. What am I thinking? There we go. Whoa. Wowzers. Holy moly. That's like the worst since the wow. That is the last day from that was back at, this bad was at the beginning of July or on the 7th of July. So on bounce plays, I'm still going to be watching for rollover plays on this. Not surprised we're getting a little bounce there right now, but I'm still going to be watching for rollover plays unless we can start getting above 6,400 again and sustain something. With that, does Hood have a potential weekly double top? We can check on that. Then I got to run. Hood weekly. Let's check it out. Valid from this standpoint. So yes, it is, because I can. Oh, by the way, I'd use the left-hand side targets. By the way, there you go, against the weekly rotation zone. But I want to see where that plays with the retracement harmonics too. Woo! Look at that. Yeah, that could be an interesting play. Thank you for pointing that out, Sterling. That could be interesting. Because look where that 50% harmonic is and the target for the double. Virtually the same level. It has not confirmed or triggered yet. But that is definitely something to keep an eye on. Thank you for pointing that out, Sterling. All right, with that, again, stay safe out there. Hope you have some hedges on. Do not be afraid at some point to unwind a little bit. I told you exactly what I was watching today. Because again, we'll get a snapback rally. You'll have, and the volatility has been collapsing so quickly. If I can take some off with a profit out pay for something and put it back on, again, through the middle of October, and I'm really focused on stuff. The buyback window, as we talked about last week, closes on the 14th. So, could we easily get some bounces into them? Yes. I mean, these patterns, even the NASDAQ pattern, does that mean we collapse? No. You can see we still get the multi-day rallies. You're getting people buying the dips. But the dips are getting weaker. That's how we got the head and shoulders pattern. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. Everybody have a fantastic trading day, and I'll talk to everyone later. Bye for now.